My name is Tammy Lea Meyer, and it's my pleasure to be led in a discovery conversation with Dasaratha Rama. Rama we have been working together exploring systems of success, and now it's time to turn the telescope around. So Rama, I invite you to lead me in an exploration of my work.
Okay, Tammy, thank you. As you might have guessed, my curiosity is around your media making work. I know you're involved in the global challenges, collaboration, and other initiatives. But my personal curiosity is around media making. So, if that's okay with you, I'd like to know a little bit about your, how you came to that media making work, where you're wanting to go with it, and what do you see in your future.
Well, in terms of the media making, what I realized in about the year 2000 was that the way that our media worked was about to go through a transformation. And the corporate control of message and media creation was about to shift. And I had a deep insight that it was time for us to own our own voices, to be the media ourselves, and to learn how to use the tools so that we could share our messages, so that we could create media from what it is that we wanted to create, rather than from within a narrative that's crafted by society, for example.
Okay, so what brought you to the discovery conversation format?
Well, it's a way for us to really be able to, as peers, explore each other's work. So it's the manifestation, really, of self-generated media in a way that gives the control, the power to the participants themselves.
Okay, so were you using Zoom from the beginning, or was there a pre-Zoom time with your discovery conversation?
Yeah, I started on Google Hangouts. I tried Skype, but I didn't like it so much. And then Google Hangouts I used for a while. I started with Zoom and then sort of fell away. I didn't understand the platform that well. And so I took a break from that for a little while, and then I had some help with others using Zoom and participating on Zoom. And then I was like, hey, wait a minute, this is awesome. And one of the collaborators and friends that I have that I've been working with for a while, Fleming Funch, he had an account and he gave me access. So he's been supporting me doing these Zoom conversations by giving me access to the platform.
Wonderful. The other question I have, which I'm curious about, is your process orientation. For me, I come from a business background. Business process is what I have taught in one way or the other. So I'm just curious what brought you to a clear process for media making, and how did that start, and then how did you get a follow-up question to that? How did you get to a place where you document that process pretty routinely?
Well, okay, that was a lot. What was the first part of the question?
Okay, first part of the question was what brought you to the process. Maybe let's take that first. What brought you to the process, and then we'll take the next part after that.
Well, I mean, this really has its roots back in 2000. I co-founded an organization with some other colleagues called the People's Network, and so we created a website. We did a lot of media making with community members here in Vancouver, and kind of put together a pre-social network, social network. And in that, I mean, the process of creating anything is, if it's to be repeatable, it needs to be documented. So I started to realize that way back then. And really, I'm a hacker, right? I just look at the tools available and hack them together such that they work together. And so as things progressed, I began to more and more realize that the insights that I was having were valuable, and that uh, the insight about the process was really important. And it for me is fundamentally that I believe that we need to own our own voice in a real way. And so that's not just a theory, that's a fundament to this work. And so to do that, you need to have a process for people to opt in to, to A, agreeing to press record, and B, sharing it. And then there's a really important part of the process in there, which is to watch it and reflect upon how different ears are going to hear it. Because you may mention someone, and is that person going to be happy about the way that they're mentioned? These are all very subtle pieces of the process that are all about how humans interact, actually. And so it's not just simply a process to kind of document, but also a sensitivity in terms of relationships and surfacing ideas and building a narrative that needs the participants to participate in it. Otherwise, they don't have full ownership, and the process isn't modeling what it's designed to model.
So how do you find the people, that you want to invest time doing discovery conversations with?
People who inspire me. And also there's a larger project that this fits into, which is essentially a global empowerment, human empowerment project. So I'm just modeling and demonstrating the kind of empowerment that I think that we all need to express and play in the space of. And so I've really been focusing on orchestrators, people who are facilitating networks, because I think that they have the ability to see the power of peer-to-peer media creation, because they all have something to say. They have a community of focus, and it is useful for communities to see each other, to support each other's work, and to make sense more broadly about the group's goals. So, you know, in part of why I'm inspired to work with you is because you're orchestrating networks, and you are within your own lens of work, bringing people together to see how they can be stronger together, how they can help each other, and and you know, as well as the ecology of systems thinking and the pattern science community. There are some amazing leading lights that have powerful work that needs to be seen. And I am motivated as a peer to support that work and to help to make sense of it. And it's through that process that people can see the value.
There are a few interesting thoughts there, but your point about orchestrators really interests me, and orchestrators has been a special interest for me, because I think orchestrators clarify intent, set the tone of the group, probably come up with a communication format, and a lot of different things. So it makes sense to me that you would I hadn't given thought to it as much, but it makes sense that you probably work with a lot of orchestrators in your work, and probably what you do helps them clarify the message with their groups, and also probably build a community of orchestrators in a sense, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think that there's good leverage there, because as these practices are picked up by others, I think that it'll just be there'll be a level of virality with it, and that comes from the interest from the people themselves. You know, I notice that I haven't been posting the work that I do on my Tammy Lea Meyer feed. I've been kind of keeping them in these protected groups to grow the process such that it's really resilient. But I think that it's time now that I'm posting these pieces more publicly so that others can see and engage and perhaps pick up the process in place. Yeah.
Can you say a little bit about the three-part process that you came up with?
Yeah, I mean, I just think I had a conversation with someone, and I realized in it I really wanted to do the three-part process in one go. And so I framed it for this person that way. So I was like, okay, so we'll start with you and your work, and then you can ask me about mine, and then we'll, at the end of the hour, we'll see where the intersections are. And at about the 35-minute mark, I kind of inquired, wanting to kind of put the conversation more towards me, because the person is an accomplished person and had a lot to share. And in that moment, I was frustrated because it hadn't come to me yet to ask me about myself, and I realized, and so I mentioned something in the session, but it still didn't have that two-way conversation. It was more of a one-way presentation. And so by the end of that, I realized that with any person, especially people that have been devoting their life to a specific body of work, that you need at least an hour to listen to that person, to hear where they came from, to know what brought them to their work, and to follow your curiosity as a listener, to have that person feel heard, and for you to know enough to be able to really understand them and their work. So at that point, I was like, okay, well, maybe it's a three-part series, and then it gives the second person the opportunity to switch roles and take on that, leading with their curiosity, and builds important social skills in terms of listening, right? Because if you've put decades into a work, you're wanting to present it, and people do have challenges creating the space to be able to really listen. It's not as easy, and there's that tension and competition for time that happens. That's part of the culture that we're in, is the people with the power are the people that have the microphone or have the voice. And what this process does is it breaks that down and shares that power, and allows hopefully by the third session some space for both people to really feel as equal peers, and that they know enough about each other to see those points of intersectionality. And then it's that third one that really, I think, has a lot of power to demonstrate the collaboration, and takes this process into another level entirely, where we both know why we're here, and we're both publicly, because these are meant to be shared, making agreements about how we may want to work together. And so,
can you say something more about agreements? Because I know that I've seen that on your site in several places, that notion of agreements seems to be sort of a central place in your work. And can you say more about how that fits into the process?
So I believe that there's a turning point or intervention in how we agree to publicly participate with our voice and image. So fundamentally, I believe that we need to have ways that we understand within process that we are empowered to share in the way that we want to share. And what that means in real terms is that I never share media that people have said I don't want to share that. It's fully opt-in. We're choosing what we want to share, and there are parts of the process that are put in place to make sure that people are sharing what they want to share. And so taking that ownership is a bit of a shift, and people hop right over it, because once you press record, people think, oh, okay, well, it's being recorded. I guess it's being shared. But I think we need to deeply consider that process and actually consciously choose to share, and then choose who we may want to share it with. And that's a really important thing to consider when you're making media, because it is about the audience. How you may speak
Yes.
is how is going to be made for a specific audience, and
Yes.
so it lands back in the present moment of the process itself. Right now, for example, we're both deciding what we're going to say next, right?
Yes.
But it is emergent as well. So there's this kind of magic space
Yes.
where we are both agreeing by how we are to share in a specific way. And it's innovating on that as empowered citizens and community members that I think has the power to change the world.
I do like the way connecting the dots between empowering people. Empowering people means, the whole idea of helping people express their voice. And sometimes it's also probably a question of nudging people, because, even taking me as an example, I don't like to be on video. So you probably come across many people who don't, want to be there, and, and yet at the same time you encourage them to be there. So I think, at least personally, my experiences, you also have that part of the process incorporated, where you are willing to take the time and, let people sort of work their way into the process in a way that's comfortable for them. And so, hence my curiosity about the process. So the process and agreement, that brings me to another, and we touched upon the documentation, but if you can say a little bit about your Medium presence and how that ties into your discovery conversation work.
Yeah, in terms of the Medium presence, I just have always liked Medium. It's free, easy to work with. You can embed video, audio, pictures. You can quickly put together a blog. You can tag people. And so I find that it's easy and it's robust, and it's a way to be able to mock up the kind of systems that I think we need to co-design and develop as we co-design identity mechanisms. So that's another big part of some of my interest is how
Can
do
you say more about that identity mechanism? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so right now, we don't own our own data. It's the new gold, and it's being extracted just like oil, just like trees, just like precious minerals all around the world. And that's a huge example of injustice being wrought upon people, this extractive tendency. And so this has been applied to data. Now, it's my belief that the last things that can be taken from us is our voice and our image. Like, you just actually can't say that it's right that corporations or states can take the products of our identity without some sort of consensual process. So I'm putting my finger on that as a space of intervention, as a place that we can look at collectively and say, oh, right, yes, corporations and businesses shouldn't have the right to take the products of our identity. And so, so in my process, I make that promise. I'm not sharing media without consent. And that is a space that I think that we can co-design systems as it relates to our identity, to be able to retain the rights to our voice and our image, and from that, our intellectual capital that we capture in digital form. You know, a couple hundred years ago, it was the printing press. Now it's press, record, and whatever medium we may choose to. And I think we have an opportunity to co-design systems where the products of our identity can be retained by us as a matter of system design.
Right. And I think it's an issue of trust as well. Unless there's some assurance of this kind of process, uh, people are going to be reluctant to engage. So I think that's definitely, an issue there. Another question, since I'm an educator, how do you see this kind of a model working in education?
Amazing. Like it's already being used. A lot of people are doing video conferencing to deliver lessons and work with groups that are not in the same place. And I think that that's one of the biggest places where we can make amazing contributions in particular with mentorship, right? Like in the paying it forward realm, to
Right.
be able to work directly with people, either one-on-one or in small groups, to be able to create media that can then be used to teach.
I was also thinking something else, because you see things like, say, Khan Academy, and there's just a lot of video output, but most of it is, sort of one directional presentation. So one thing that, maybe we can talk about with the next conversation, but one thing that I was curious about is, what if the discovery conversation was adapted to that? So for example, if I want to do videos on, say, data analytics, and I use Data Camp, and again, there's a lot of videos, and they're good, well done, and all the visual and the auditory and everything. But if that were done in a more conversational way,
Yeah.
so if I'm saying, oh, I'm going to tell you about tidyverse, and somebody sort of elicits that, so would that be a more powerful model for the learner to learn rather than just a one-way delivery? I guess that's where my curiosity was.
Yes, absolutely, Rama, because that we learn through storytelling.
Yes.
Best, I think, that it maps to our the way that we actually work socially.
Yes.
So that's why the narrative is so important. Whatever narrative it is, it either gives hope or takes power away. And so if students are encouraged to dialogue around what they're learning, that can be used again, because it is engaging. You're following that thought process. And I think that the in real time generativity is
Yes.
really where the power is. But there's also the follow on of being able to rewatch and learn again. And I think that we will continue to kind of harvest those insights and the wisdom and knowledge that's embedded and encoded in those moments, and play that forward.
Yes, and I'm also thinking it's because a lot of times students don't speak up or ask, or they just sort of passively listen because you probably conditioned them to do that. But if you have this kind of discovery conversation, it's also an opportunity to model active listening.
Yes.
So you don't just have the speaker, but you have a speaker and an active listener in partnership.
That's right. And that's powerful. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm just wondering whether, so that's something that I've been thinking about in terms of adapting the discovery conversation to teach, sort of, instead of just doing a one-way teaching, one person speaking, do it in a more conversational format. And I think I also came to this because, I've seen those videos, and I would not find it very comfortable just, no class, I'm just talking by myself and somebody recording. Whereas a dynamic process, when there is somebody and you're interacting with somebody, I think it would also be easier for the speaker to explain what they're explaining.
Yes, I mean, and just in terms of the discovery process itself, without a listener, there's nothing.
Yes.
And so that dynamic curiosity allows this to be a living moment. But
Yes.
without that, it's just an expression that isn't necessarily received.
Yes.
And so it's that interaction that has the magic, I
Yes.
think.
And that's probably why, at least for me, I think I became very comfortable with the process really quickly, much faster than I expected. And I think it was because, I didn't feel like, oh, I was on, in presentation mode. It was more like I was just talking to somebody.
Yeah.
And so that just put me at ease really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm feeling that a person watching such a video also would have a different experience than just one directional speaking.
Well, and that would be interesting to explore in our groups in terms of how the style of what we've been creating lands for people. And also just thinking about what are the further innovations on that, like what is it to get, I would still love to do some more of the group conversations with you with some of the folks, because I think that is where we're going to continue to innovate.
Yes.
And there's something really powerful about minds coming together.
Yes.
To be able to really hear what we're each bringing.
So since you brought up the group conversations, the question for you is, how do you scale the process to a group?
Well, the GCC has been an amazing, so that's the Global Challenges Collaboration. So that's a group of folks that started coming together last summer, put in a proposal for the Global Challenges Foundation. And we've done hundreds of conversations at this point. I think probably, 170 or something like that.
Okay.
And these are all us definitely finding our way. We have our intent to support transitioning and working with global challenges, and that the process of co-constituting is one that I just don't actually know how to do it, Rama, in a way that is representative of the sovereignty of each person, because that's really important. So when we become a group, it limits us in many ways.
Yes. It's easier because this, the one-on-one format, you can design a structure where you say, first you speak, then I speak, and then explore the collaboration. So that seems like a very scalable process, but I'm wondering how bringing multiple people in, unless you set containers some way, that is, okay, let's focus on, like the one experience I had with you where we were talking about Felicia's work and the rest of us were more in the listener mode. That, to me, I can see that as a way to scale it.
Absolutely. And what we've been building in terms of a community of practice in the Global Challenges collaboration has been getting closer and closer and closer to a group dynamic. Like it has happened several times where a group dynamic has emerged where you can really feel the will of the group is emergent in the middle, and it's not one person pushing too much or anything like that. And that group field has been created and has been maintained. It's not easy. If one person comes in and is burning super hot, it's going to be on that. The focus is going to really be on that person, and there's a group response that needs to be there to be able to hold that space and to be able to co-discover what is truly emergent in that moment. So it's still a work in process.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's a little bit difficult to come up with that the clearly articulated process with the group situation.
I don't think it's actually that hard, Rama. I think that it is, there's a certain level of trust and intention coming in that guides the process enough that if people are ready to show up and really listen to each other, that the conversation will be good. Mm-hmm. And in that case, I think that it's really important to convene specifically as well. Many of the conversations in the Global Challenges collaboration have just been fully open, but I think that there's real power in specifically choosing and convening groups based on who they are and where you think their work intersects, and focusing it such that there's a clear point of focus and purpose for everyone to be there. And in that case, that is moving towards the process that I think can be a profound, uh, uh, scalable process that can transform issues and challenges that we have.
Yes, I think if I hear you right, I think if having like a sort of a guiding question or a clear intent for each conversation,
Yes.
and bringing people who are somewhere interested in that question.
Yeah.
I think that would give it focus, and I can see how you could engage people in responding to that.
Yes.
So continuing on this thread, I can see that groups is one direction you're moving, but overall, where do you see this going in the next year or 5 years? Where do you hope to take this?
Well, I am really focused on the space where media, democracy, and the economy meet. And so I'm basically, this is a full stack process. It's like I envision a world where there is true equality, and that's designed into our economic and social systems. And so my focus over the next foreseeable period is to have conversations with people who also see that need and document those collaborations such that the media that we're creating can further engage others who are also interested in building the new economy from the ground up. So that looks like a lot of different things, but for me, it looks like inputting into those designs. So my work with media is I see media as a currency of its own that holds the intellectual value and the social value of the people in them, and that it's a way to be able to daylight a process of empowerment. To do that, we need to be empowered in it.
Yes.
And so I'm continuing to follow that process and to engage with people that inspire me, that are doing work in global transformation and in economic transformation in particular, so that we can connect our work and have this, I call it a distributed documentary, Rama. What we've been doing, we're documenting our work and we're distributing it. And at some point, we will be further along in co-designing the signaling process and the weaving process with the people's work, including mine.
Yes. So you brought up full stack. So I'm just curious if you can say a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Yeah. So
because I hear it in the in the systems person, so I hear it in the programming context. So.
So at the same time, we are sharing our ideas, recording it. It is a present moment encapsulated in an artifact, and it can do other things from here. Other people can see it and hear it, be inspired by it, use the ideas, connect with you, connect with me, see how their work might connect. So we have this present moment that we're in, but it connects the past moments where we learned what we learned and we're sharing it now. It also connects the future moments where others may come into contact with our work. And it, depending on what we do, it can, in this moment, be moving our work forward. So there are many things that are happening in tandem, which is what I mean by full stack. It's hard to articulate because the process itself is embedded within the capture.
Right.
And it all kind of interacts as it's like the vertical, what is it called? When, farming practices are vertically integrated, there's a vertical integration of the process that has power and is fully integrated, because I have to be, however well I'm able to articulate what I'm looking to articulate is the state of the process that I've fully actually integrated.
Right.
And the documentation of it is just that. It's a snapshot of where I am and where you are in our process. And I think that eye on reality, that being able to take that snapshot in time, gives us access to the issue, the difficulties, the challenges, the learnings, the successes, and allows us to, really integrate all of that as a process of continuing to develop these ideas.
Another question for you. I know that one of the reasons you document is to encourage other people to try it out. So curious, how many people have taken you up on it and said, okay, Tammy, I've been through these experiences now. I'd like to do some discovery conversations myself, and I'm going to go talk to a few people I'm inspired by. So, how many times has that happened? What have you heard from them? And what's the experience been?
Yeah, some people definitely have. I know Sam did some, did a couple with some folks. And there's been a couple of people that have used that process. They may or may not press record. They may or may not share them. So the full process, not fully, but I think that it's also for people to kind of start to understand how it can be useful within their context, which is why working with Helmut Leitner and Will Vannewagen from Enlivening Edge, these are orchestrators within their own networks that, they can see the value of what it is to encourage their cohorts of people to do this kind of discovery, which is why I've been focusing on those orchestrators. So I'm starting to see some interest, certainly. Will has done a few segments with me and has done one with one of the leading lights in new organizational development. And Helmut and I, our session yesterday, that was wonderful. We really connected. We did, both of the first two pieces in the process. And he's looking to help to make this happen within the pattern science community, which is incredibly encouraging to me, because these are brilliant humans who are looking at using patterns and pattern science to enact social change and to support transition to commons. So there's a lot of commoners in that movement, as well as brilliant thinkers in terms of the patterns that we're seeing, including social patterns that affect the way that our world actually works. So I'm just following the process and wanting to meet people who really can see the value and benefit of empowering each other's voices and in collaborating together to enact the change that we know needs to happen.
I also wanted to, ask a little bit about another possibility that's occurred to me, which is to take this in a more asynchronous mode, which is sort of where my influencer of the month, that's where I'm trying to go. But now that my group is a little bigger, it's a bit hard to actually make it happen. There's just too much other traffic there. So even when I say, okay, this is the influencer of the month, very quickly the, emphasis goes away from that person. So maybe it just needs to happen in a smaller space. But I think it's also a way of what John Stepper, who's created Working Out Loud, would call offering attention.
Yeah.
So I see the discovery conversation as a way of offering attention. Okay, for this hour, I'm just listening to you and, following my curiosity. So I think it's definitely a practice of offering attention, which some people may not enjoy video as much. And so to me, maybe creating that asynchronous modes as well is something that, the synchronous mode could inform. So I don't know if you've thought about that.
Definitely. And one piece which I haven't done as much of or made as visible is directed communications. So and this again would be on, I am media focused. So this would be me in front of the camera inviting someone to participate and setting my intention to invite them. So that would be an asynchronous way to engage. And I think that that's something that I think it's very powerful to make a piece of media specifically for someone. There's an impact that happens when you have someone that is, their face is, it's like a voice message, but it's got power because it shows that investment of time and attention specifically in that person. And I think that's both valuable and impactful, as well as helps to set and ground the intention for engagement. And I think that other than that, it does happen anyway. You know, the asynchronous writing, if we're talking about writing, you know, the way that you're orchestrating threads and engaging people in conversation, that is what's happening. Is it that harvestable by someone coming in from the outside?
It's difficult. Yeah.
These are the challenges that we have in information overload and in so much powerful work that people are doing.
Yes.
And that needs to be seen and needs to have attention given to it. So creating the artifacts that clarify that, as Harry might do in an image, so that we're saving our time. Those are important contributions to being able to make asynchronous communication as dialed in as it needs to be to serve what the communication wants.
Because one of the things that occurred to me is, you know, as it's that whole gift of attention issue. And even though I may be interested in many people's work, I just don't have enough hours in the day to, you know, even join the Zoom conversations. I can barely make one conversation a week. And so I'm not having the time at this point because I'm also working on a lot of other, you know, things at this time. But if there was a way to also go a little bit beyond and create a sort of a library or a repository of the conversations with some kind of an indexing, tagging, search.
Yes, and that's what we have been wanting to build in the GCC. That's part of what we're looking to build. And so, you know, and I've day before yesterday, in our Thursday conversation, I brought that up. Or one of the recent ones, I'm not sure. They blend into each other, of the needs that that we have in turn. Because I've got a pile of media, like I've got a lot that I need to then share appropriately, give correct permissions for. All of that needs to be an automated system, and I do see that as something that's built on Holochain and Holo as a distributed access point. You know, it's last night I was really deeply considering that, you know, I believe in using the tools that are available and are here now, and so Facebook and YouTube are those core tools, but they don't do what we need it to do in terms of permissions and signaling and tagging and that kind of next level of sense making. It's all work that people actually need to do within those frames and formats. So we are, later on today, we're having a barn raising session, which is, you know, a session where we focus on the building that we need to build. And so I'm thinking that may come up again there, because that's been a recent stream of consideration that we've been in as a group.
Yes, because I remember a while back there was a video that caught my eye on storytelling. I didn't have time then, and now I know where it is. I'll have to go probably search through and see where it is. So things like that, you know, I mean, there's a whole stream of videos moving, and you say, oh, that's a topic that interests me. And but by the time, you know, you turn around, there are many more things on the way. So
yes, it's rich out there.
Yes.
So I guess, you know, my hopes and what I'm committed to investing in is in connecting people with how they can communicate their work in the best possible way. So, you know, creating, you know, holding this space for discovery conversations, holding space and helping to guide group conversations, so that we can get to the point of collaboration that we need to to get the work done. It's all in there, you know, it's all in aid of global systems change from my perspective. And while that may seem like, oh, that's huge, it is literally required for us to survive. And so, you know, that's kind of the burning passion that gets me up every day, is that I know that we need to radically change our systems. And part of that is telling a story and owning our place in it, and being generous with each other to be to truly deeply cooperate and collaborate.
Yes, and I think in today's environment, I think that's you know, owning that media making and creating authentic media by just being there. I think there's a real need for that. So,
great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You know, now I've got some more insights into what I've been experiencing with you over these past few, you know, conversations.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to explore a bit deeper in what I've been up to. And I, of course, look forward to future collaborations.
Thank you.